Rhea sat in the quiet darkness of her cottage, the wind howling outside, but her thoughts were louder than the storm. Her fingers brushed lightly over the silver locket she wore, its delicate chain feeling too heavy around her neck. The locket was all she had left of him, Elias, the Alpha King. The one man she had loved, the one man who had rejected her. It had been months since the rejection, but the pain still lingered. Elias had been her fated mate, the man the moon had chosen for her. She had felt the pull in her chest the moment their eyes had met, the deep connection that ran deeper than love itself. She had thought that no matter what happened, they would always be together. But she had been wrong. Elias had rejected her in front of his entire pack, and the pain of that moment had shattered her heart. His cold, indifferent words still echoed in her ears. "You are not the one I need." The shame, the humiliation had crushed her. He had claimed it was for the good of the pack, that she was too weak to be the mate of an alpha. But Rhea knew the truth. Elias had seen her as nothing more than a liability. Now she was nothing more than a ghost, hiding in the corners of his kingdom. The curse that had been placed upon their bond had started to take hold, pulling her into a deeper darkness with every passing day. She could feel the magic gnawing at her soul, threatening to consume her completely. She had become an empty shell, her heart no longer beating with the hope of a future, but only the agony of the past. One evening, as she gathered herbs from the forest near her cottage, she was approached by a group of wolves, Elias's wolves. They had found her, just like she knew they would. Her heart raced in fear, knowing she would have to face him again, even if he didn't know she was still alive. "Rhea," one of the guards said, his voice gruff, "the Alpha has called for you. You are to return to the palace." Her chest tightened at the mention of his name. Elias. She wanted to refuse, to run deeper into the woods, but something stopped her. The connection between them, the bond they shared, pulled her back towards him even though it had torn her apart. "I don't belong there anymore," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You don't have a choice," the guard said, his voice cold, but there was something softer in his eyes. Maybe he felt pity for her. Maybe he didn't. As they escorted her back to the palace, Rhea's mind swirled with conflicting emotions. Why had Elias called for her? Was this a punishment? Was he trying to break her completely, to make sure she never thought of him again? Or was there something else? Something she couldn't understand? The palace loomed ahead, its dark towers piercing the sky. Rhea had once walked these halls with pride, her every step a declaration of her place at Elias's side. But now the palace felt like a prison. She had been thrown out like an unwanted thing, and now they were pulling her back. As they entered the grand hall, Elias was waiting at the top of the staircase. He stood tall, his presence commanding. His eyes locked onto hers the moment she stepped into the room, and for a brief moment, the world seemed to slow. Rhea could feel his gaze on her, like the weight of everything she had lost. The intensity of his stare burned through her. Her heart fluttered despite everything. She hated herself for it. "Rhea," Elias said, his voice as cold and commanding as ever. But there was something in the way he said her name that made her pulse quicken. "You've returned," she swallowed, struggling to keep her voice steady. "I've been hiding. I had no reason to come back." "You have no choice," Elias replied, his words sharp, but she noticed the slight flicker of something else in his eyes. Guilt? Regret? She couldn't tell. "You are still my mate, even if you refuse to believe it." Her heart skipped a beat at his words, but she fought to keep her composure. "You rejected me," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "You threw me away like I meant nothing to you." Elias's jaw tightened, his expression hardening. "I did what I thought was best for the pack. You are not weak, Rhea, but the curse that binds us, it makes you vulnerable, and I couldn't let that weakness destroy us both." "Then why bring me here now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why now?" "I need you, Rhea," he said, his words surprising her. "The kingdom is in danger. There are wolves plotting against me and your magic. It's the only way we can protect everything we've built." Her eyes widened. "What do you mean, my magic?" "The bond between us," Elias explained. his voice softer now, though still full of authority. "It's not just a simple mate bond. It's stronger than that. It's tied to ancient magic, a magic that can protect us from those who want to tear everything apart. But we can't tap into it unless we are together." Rhea stared at him, the weight of his words sinking in. She had never known the true depth of their connection. She had always believed it was just a bond, something that had existed because they were meant to be together. But now, Elias was telling her that their bond held power, something that could change the course of their world. But why hadn't he told her before? Why had he rejected her if they were truly meant to be? The questions tore at her, but she couldn't bring herself to ask. The truth was too painful. "You want me to help you," she said, her voice flat. "After everything you did to me, you want me to help you save your kingdom?" Elias's eyes softened, the mask of the Alpha King slipping for a moment. "I never wanted to hurt you, Rhea, but I was wrong. I see that now. Please, help me." For a moment, Rhea didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to walk away, to leave him behind as he had left her. But another part of her, the part that had never stopped loving him, wanted to believe that this was his way of trying to make things right. The silence stretched between them, the weight of their shared history hanging in the air. Then, with a deep sigh, Rhea finally spoke. "I will help you," she said quietly. "But this doesn't mean I forgive you." "You've broken something in me, Elias, and that's not something you can fix with words." Elias looked at her, his expression full of regret. "I know," he whispered, "but I will spend the rest of my life trying to make it right." The words, though filled with sincerity, didn't ease the ache in her heart. She knew that trusting him again would take time, and even then, she didn't know if their bond would ever be enough to heal the wounds he had caused. As they turned to leave the grand hall, Elias's hand brushed against hers, sending a jolt of electricity through her. She quickly pulled away, but the brief touch lingered. There was still a pull between them, a bond that refused to break. Rhea closed her eyes, forcing herself to focus. She didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. The Alpha King's kingdom was in turmoil, and the darkness that had been growing inside her was only just beginning to rise. Rhea's heart pounded in her chest as she stood at the edge of the royal grounds, the moonlight casting long shadows across the stone courtyard. Elias had asked for her help, but now she found herself questioning everything. The Alpha King, the man who had broken her heart, now needed her to help protect his kingdom. But was that enough to erase the pain he had caused her? Since her return to the palace, the tension between them had been unbearable. Elias, once cold and distant, now looked at her with something that resembled guilt, and perhaps even longing. But Rhea was no fool. She had seen the way he ruled, the way he pushed away anyone who might show weakness. He had rejected her for his own reasons, and now, as his kingdom faced threats from within, he had turned to her for help. Despite everything, she could not deny the bond that still pulled at her. It was as if her very soul recognized him, even after all the hurt. The curse that had been placed upon their connection had only grown stronger in her absence. She felt it now, deep inside her, a constant ache that wouldn't go away. Her body ached for him, her heart twisted with the desire to forgive him, but she knew better than to trust too easily. As she walked through the corridors of the palace, Rhea tried to focus on the task at hand. She had been called here to protect the kingdom, not to indulge in her own feelings. But every time she saw Elias, every time their paths crossed, it was hard to remember that. The palace was on edge. Elias had sent scouts to search for signs of betrayal among his pack, but so far, nothing had been found. Still, the sense of danger hung thick in the air. The Alpha King's enemies were growing bolder, and Elias needed every advantage to keep his kingdom safe. He had learned that Rhea's magic was not only tied to their bond, but also to the ancient powers that had once protected the land. Rhea didn't understand the full extent of the magic that flowed through her, but she had seen glimpses of it. In moments of intense emotion, her powers flared up, powers that could heal wounds, bend light, and even manipulate shadows. She was learning to control them, but there was still so much she didn't know. That night, Elias summoned her to the war room. The air inside the stone chamber was thick with tension. Maps and scrolls were spread across the long wooden table, and the faces of his trusted warriors were grim. "Rhea," Elias said, his voice strong and commanding, "we have little time. The traitors inside the pack are close to launching their attack. We need to strike first." Rhea nodded, her heart racing. "I'll help. But I need you to promise me something," she said, her voice steady despite the fear that tightened her chest. "If we do this, we do it together. You don't push me aside like you did before." Elias looked at her, his eyes dark but filled with something else, something softer. "I never wanted to push you away, Rhea. I was wrong, and I'll never make that mistake again. You're not just my mate. You're my equal. We will fight this together." Rhea held his gaze, searching for any hint of deceit. She found none. There was only the truth in his eyes. She had been right to come back. She had been right to give him another chance. With a deep breath, she stepped forward and placed her hand on the map. "Then let's do this." The days that followed were a blur of preparations, training, and quiet moments spent in the war room. Rhea and Elias worked side by side, discussing strategy and gathering the forces they needed to protect the kingdom. She could see the strain on his face, the weight of the decisions he had to make. But he never wavered. He was still the Alpha King, and nothing would make him falter. But it wasn't just the kingdom they were fighting for. The bond between them, once fractured and distant, had started to heal. Slowly but surely, Rhea could feel the pull between them growing stronger. She tried to push it away, tried to focus only on the mission, but it was hard to ignore the deep connection they shared. One night, after a long day of strategy meetings, Elias found her alone in the garden. The moonlight bathed her in a soft glow, her long hair flowing gently in the breeze. She was standing at the edge of the garden, staring at the distant mountains, her thoughts far away. "Rhea," Elias called softly, his voice reaching her through the silence. "I didn't mean to disturb you." She turned to face him, her heart skipping a beat at the sight of him. "You're not disturbing me, Elias," she said quietly. "I was just thinking." He walked toward her, his footsteps echoing in the stillness. "About what?" "About everything," Rhea replied, her voice distant. "About the past, the future. About us." Elias stopped in front of her, his eyes searching hers. "I don't want to just fight this war with you, Rhea. I want to fight for us. I want to fix what I broke." She swallowed hard, the emotion threatening to overwhelm her. "Can you really fix it? Can you fix what you did to me?" For a moment, there was silence between them. Then Elias reached out, gently cupping her face in his hands. His touch was warm, and for the first time in a long while, Rhea didn't pull away. Instead, she closed her eyes, letting herself feel the warmth of his touch. "I can't change the past," Elias said quietly, "but I can promise you that I will never hurt you again. I will spend the rest of my life trying to make things right. If you let me." Rhea's heart ached at his words. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that everything they had been through had led to this moment, that they could rebuild what they had lost. But part of her still feared that he would let her down again. She took a deep breath and stepped back, breaking the moment. "I'm not ready to forgive you yet," she said softly. "But I will fight beside you. For the kingdom. For us." Elias nodded, his expression filled with understanding. "I'll wait for you, Rhea. I'll wait as long as it takes." And with that, their partnership was solidified. No more words were needed. The battle ahead was the true test, and they would face it together. The next day, the call to arms was sounded throughout the kingdom. Rhea and Elias led the warriors into battle, their forces moving swiftly through the dense forests and over the rocky hills. The air was thick with anticipation, the sound of armor clinking and the growls of wolves echoing in the distance. As they reached the enemy's stronghold, Rhea could feel the magic inside her stirring. She could sense Elias nearby, his presence like a pulse against her own heart. Together they were unstoppable. The battle raged on, fierce and brutal. Rhea fought with all her strength, her powers flowing freely as she healed the wounded and struck down their enemies with bursts of light. But amid the chaos, something unexpected happened. A wolf from the enemy's ranks broke through their defenses and attacked Elias. Ria's heart stopped in her chest as she watched the blade strike Elias's side, sending him crashing to the ground. Her world went black with rage. With a scream, Ria charged forward, her powers flaring like fire. She could feel the rage burning inside her, the power of their bond lighting the way. In an instant, she reached Elias's side, her hands glowing with healing magic as she knelt beside him, but the battle wasn't over. And neither was their struggle for redemption.